Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine Turner and I am the creator of the Divine Feminine Collective. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. The Divine Feminine Collective was created in 2017 to open up the conversation and really break the taboo around intimacy, sexuality and sensuality. More and more I was noticing in mainstream society that there was so much resistance around this conversation, and I'm really out to build a bridge between the community, like the mainstream society, and what we would call the conscious community. Around there's some really healthy, beautiful conversations to be had, and I'm really out to share these conversations and share my journey along the way. So tonight's live broadcast is around what role we can play as women to encourage the men in our lives to be open, vulnerable and connected. Now you may be asking, what has this got to do with the Divine Feminine Collective? And my answer is this. I have personally been affected by suicide. I have today and have had men, intimate lovers and partners and men in my family who have suffered from depression. And I know firsthand what it feels like to see a man that I love so deeply fall into the hands of a dark depression. So in preparation for this interview, I have recalled a moment in my life where my partner was suffering from addiction and depression. And I recall so vividly moments in that relationship where I could see a man that I loved so deeply and I did not have the tools to help him. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't even have the conversational tools to have with him to open up the conversation about what he was experiencing and what he was going through. And he was a completely closed book of emotions, full of self-hate and depression. Now, as a female growing up in Australia, I was taught to express my emotions. And some of the family members in my life will probably say I'm a little bit too self-expressed. As women in our society, we're taught that releasing our emotions is a healthy experience. We're taught to go and cry on a friend's shoulder, and we're taught that releasing emotions is good and healthy. Whereas on the other hand, men are told to be men. Men are told to harden up, eat some cement, and don't be a pussy. Now, do these sound familiar to you? It's what we've grown up with in our culture, and it's a societal norm to hear these words commonly said. And it's directly because of this social conditioning, we hear the alarming statistics of 1 in 8 men will experience depression and 1 in 5 men will experience anxiety at some stage in their lives. Men make up an average of 6 out of 8 suicides every day in Australia. Number of men who die by suicide in Australia every year is nearly double the national road toll. 1 in 3 women have experienced physical and or sexual violence perpetrated by someone known to them. Over 12 months on average, 1 woman is killed every week by a current or former partner. And Australian Indigenous women and girls are 35 times more likely than the wider female population to be hospitalised due to family violence. Now, when a human being doesn't know how to release their emotions and find the healing that they need, I believe it comes out sideways in the form of depression, anxiety, suicide, crime, sexual and domestic family violence. Today's live broadcast is a call to action for women. Now, I am personally out to interrupt the social conditioning of what it is to be a man. And I believe a good start to altering this is with who we as women, wives, lovers, partners, sisters and friends are being for our men, and the safe space we create for them to be open, vulnerable and connected. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest tonight, which is EJ Love. EJ, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you. It's such a, I love this topic. It's very close to my heart. So it's a real honor to be here, and I'm really excited to share with you and everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to read out your bio, but before I do that, tonight, I invited you to have this conversation with me tonight because I know you're doing, I know you do a lot of stuff around the world of sexuality, and I follow you on social media, and you're very active in this community around sexuality. But one important conversation that you have, and I know we can talk a little bit more about your retreats, is the conversation on loving men. My heart explodes when you do work on this, because as I just shared, I've experienced, as a woman, I've experienced feeling lost. And so the work that you're doing is really impactful, and I really want to honour who you are. And as a woman, I want to say thank you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's really beautiful to receive. Thank you.
Cool. So I'm just going to read your bio, because I really do want to capture who you are. So EJ Love is a relationship and sex coach and a sacred sexual healer, Tantrika, and has been aptly dubbed the Love Priestess. She helps people to heal and empower themselves in their relationships, love, intimacy, and sex. Speaking from her own personal experience, she travels the world sharing her message through speaking events, media, radio shows, and writing articles, books, and blogs, as well as often being interviewed on mainstream TV. EJ is on a mission to help people deeply feel the love that they are, heal themselves, and heal themselves so they can have amazing soul-connected relationships. So, EJ, welcome, and thank you very much for generously giving your time tonight.
Thank you. Love it.
Cool. Alrighty. So we'll get into the interview. So can you tell me a little bit about the work that you do and how it is you became to be a love, relationship, and sex coach?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I want to do it as quick as possible so we get into the real juicy content. So it's through obviously personal experience, and I love that you mentioned some of the stuff around depression and around even domestic violence, because I've experienced domestic violence, and my dad also had tried to commit suicide and had depression, and so I have a lot of understanding around how suppressing men's emotions, how it really affects their whole lives and their relationships. And so for me, I had experienced 3 abusive relationships, and after the 3rd one I decided that enough was enough and I had to do some really deep healing. Yeah. And it was through that I started discovering these healing processes and how common it was that women were in these situations with men. Yeah. And all these wounds that I had around men would keep playing out over and over and over again. And I was just being rewounded. And so I realized that the last relationship was like a complete rewounding. It's like almost exactly the same as the first relationship. And I was like, oh my God, it was like over 10 years time that had been difference between them. And so one of the reasons that I started working with women is to help women that had been through abuse. And so this is when I developed, I'm actually in the process of finishing my book at the moment on that, Heal Your Love Wounds process, to really take women to be able to heal their wounds and to come out and being able to have healthy relationships, which ultimately starts with self first. Yeah. And so that was that piece of working with women in that way. And then I started to work on understanding men and realizing that men weren't how I thought they were. Okay. And had all these beliefs about men, maybe just wanting one thing, or like being liars or users or abusers, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And I started to start researching. I got quite obsessive, and I'm still obsessive about it. Like, I just give me that book and that video and that podcast, and I just want to keep learning as much as I can about men. And so what I also was doing at the same time is working in the sex industry with literally thousands of men. So what I started to see was that these men that were coming in were starting to open up to me and share about their deepest fears, their deepest desires, their longings, their things they never tell their family, their partners, because they found this safe space to speak to someone who would not judge them, or they felt wouldn't judge them, that had no link to the outside world. And I got to see a different side of men. But I also started to see a different side when I started to learn more about them and understanding what they're really like. And So when I started to move into sexual healing and Tantra, which is through my own journey of that, I started to hold space for men to actually feel, to start feeling their emotions, to start crying, to bring up their anger and their frustration, and start helping them to heal their wounds. So not just holding space for women, but holding space for men. And a lot of them come to me with sexual issues, and the sexual issues are always linked to their emotions. And so if they've got like erectile dysfunction or, you know, lack of confidence or any sort of sexual issue they might have, it's always something that's happened in a relationship or when they've been younger, or that they just like are disconnected. They're completely numb, like they're completely numb, they're cut off here, and they want to get connected to their hearts because they don't feel anything anymore. And so I've been able to hold space for men and really got to, you know, working with thousands of men, understand them and just hold space for them to feel. And it's felt like such an honor. So that's the work that I do with one-on-one with men. And with women, I do a lot through healing these wounds and then teaching them how to love men. And you have different workshops and things like that. So so and then I do a little bit of couple stuff as well. So it helps them to understand each other, and, you know, through Tantra, through intimacy as well. So practices.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think one of the live videos I saw you do a couple of months ago. This is actually my first live video that I saw you do, because and sort of going into the world of sacred sexuality, I had all these stories of like, and it's probably like a lot of fear going into sort of exploring that. And your video, I can't remember which one it was. I'm talking, this is like months ago, sort of maybe middle of last year. I was like, oh wow, I've actually found someone that I feel comfortable with, and you're very natural. And for sort of someone coming in from mainstream society, it was good to have or see someone and connect with a woman, even though I had never met you at the time. That made me feel comfortable around this conversation, that it wasn't so scary, and that you are honouring for women and you are honouring for men as well. So,
both. Yeah, it's you know, I'm for human rights. You know, I'm about bridging the gap and bringing us together through understanding and through compassion. So we're not so separate, and so that's what I'm for, and that's what I take a stand for. Cool.
Thank you. So you mentioned that, you know, you have done a lot of work, you know, with men, and I guess like I'm interested to find out, in your opinion, what does it mean to be a man today?
Yeah. So what I believe in is integration. So what I mean by this is there's a lot of gender roles, and there's a lot of like masculine, feminine, and men should be masculine and women should be feminine, and you know, I'm all about, you know, we are, you know, I believe in masculine, feminine, even though it is kind of made up as well. Well, it is made up. It's still like, I resonate to that and I teach from that place. But what I teach is that we're both masculine and feminine. So I think a man today, for him to be really feel like connected to himself and to feel like a whole being and to feel like a real man, he has to be connected to his feminine energy. He has to be connected to his emotions. And feel okay with that, and feel safe with that. So I think it's about embracing all parts of self. And so for a man today, it's like, yes, he can be grounded and present and strong, but also it's the willingness to be vulnerable and seeing the strength in that, seeing the strength in the vulnerability, having the courage to be vulnerable. And I'm going to talk about that as well, but just, you know, there's so much. I actually ran a workshop for men last year, and the men said to me, what makes you feel safe with a man? And I said to him, the group of men, I said, what makes me feel safe with a man is when he's vulnerable with me. When he shows me his vulnerability, it makes me actually feel safe, which is so goes against what they've been conditioned. Don't be vulnerable, be strong, all this kind of stuff. And so I felt like, I just feel like it's like allowing themselves to be everything, and to not shame themselves for that. And it's really big, is the shaming, like shaming if they're not feeling like they have that strength, or they have those achievements, or aren't where they want to be, or not on purpose. You know, it's not shaming themselves, just being okay with where they're at. Yeah. So,
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, so just on the subject of vulnerability, it's great that you brought that up. So, I read in a book recently by Brené Brown. So being vulnerable, the dictionary definition of being vulnerable is exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. And then I've read in Brené Brown's book, for those who don't know who Brené Brown is, she's a research professor at the University of Texas, and she has done a very, very famous TED talk on shame. She's done one on shame, and she's also done one on vulnerability. And she says that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's about the willingness to show up and be seen when you can't control the outcome. So, you know, in your world and what you teach, what is vulnerability?
I heard this at a training that I went to, and I loved it. It's the willingness to be wounded. So it's speaking your truth, even when it feels risky, at the risk of being hurt, or being rejected, or being abandoned, all those wounds that we might have. It's like, I'm going to express myself, even though I'm going to do something, even though I could get hurt. So that's what vulnerability means to me. And it's a big part of it is speaking our truth. How often do we not say something because we're afraid that it is going to hurt someone, or it is, we are going to not be liked or valued if we say the wrong thing. And so it's the willingness to say the things that we're afraid to say because we have a story of how that might look or end up. And so often we do speak our truth or do the vulnerable things, and it's never how we thought it might end up, right? And for me, vulnerability is about connection. It's that, you know, as Brené says, it's like at the heart of connection. So having those vulnerable conversations are going to create deeper connection. If you avoid them, and I've been in, you know, some relationships where I shut down my vulnerability and I stopped connecting. And this is why the relationships end. It's because I was hiding myself, and there was just so much disconnection in the space. So it's really, really important.
Okay. So, Matt, can I ask, with all the work that you do, what do you most commonly hear that men crave the most? Yeah.
So more intimacy seems to be the most common, is they want more intimacy. And when I say intimacy, I don't necessarily mean sex.
Okay, because that's something that women would think all men want is sex.
Yeah, it's a common belief that, you know, men just want one thing, or they want sex. And I hear a lot of couples where, you know, the man's wanting sex and the woman wants connection. But what the woman doesn't understand is that sex is connection to a man. Like when a man has sex, that's his form of connecting. That it's sex is where a man feels the most free to express who he is. It's a deep expression of who they are. And it's a way they get to be seen for who they are. So when they're going into that, it's like, I'm going to be, you know, I'm here to be seen. I'm here to express myself. So when he's not getting that intimacy, it's this like not having being able to be fully expressed. And with intimacy, I think, you know, so many men do love physical touch. They're longing because, you know, it's not as socially acceptable for men to hug each other or to kiss each other on the cheek or lips or whatever. You know, it's not it's socially acceptable. We as women, as sisters, are, you know, giving each other big hugs. And I mean, in the Tantra communities, there's lots of hugs between men, and that's very normal. But in the outside world, you know, there's these stories around it, and you know, men may not want to be seen as gay, or there's kind of stories that run, so many men are not getting touched. Like if there's a man that's single, and this is why, you know, a lot of clients, I offer an intimate touch session where men just want to be touched, and it may just be a hug, and that they're not getting, and we don't realize how often they're just not being touched. And so I think that is something that men really crave is physical touch, and also freedom. Freedom's the other one. Men love freedom and want more freedom. Lots more freedom. Yeah. So.
Okay. Did you want to say a little bit more about the freedom? Like
The freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the freedom to be who they are. It's the freedom to just show up fully and not be judged or not be shut down. And so a lot of them are wanting freedom to express themselves. And so I think, we are moving, opening men up more these days and giving them permission to express themselves, which is awesome. And I think a lot of reason why men leave relationships or there's divorces because they feel this sense of obligation or trapped or not free. And so this is why, a lot of relationships will end if they feel like a woman is kind of maybe a bit codependent and really relying on them for the man to provide everything and do everything and this kind of stuff. I mean, there has to be a balance, right? Like I believe, like you said earlier. Yeah, agreements and things made. I mean, we're going to talk about that, but I think it's just good to be aware of what a high value freedom is to a man. And then it's interesting because women want love the most and men want freedom the most.
Yes.
So like, how can you, bring those together?
Yeah. So on the subject of freedom, and in my own relationships, I believe that freedom is a context that that we can really create in your relationship. And like you just said, you can either be in a relationship and experience like being trapped and, oh my God, I can't do this and I can't do that. But if you create it as a context that you actually live your relationship through, that we're free to express ourselves, and we're free to be vulnerable with each other, and like that's a really powerful place to come from in our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's only really fear that stops the freedom from happening. So if you have like healthy boundaries and agreements, then that's not going to happen. If you know how to help each other, be self-loving, then you're not going to, it's like when you start relying on another person to meet all your needs, a big chunk of them, and then throw expectations in the mix, this is where a man's not going to feel the freedom that he desires.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. So in the world of relationships, what's missing in the role that women play that could make a difference to our husbands or partners?
Yeah, so you touched on it earlier, and it was that there was kind of this idea that men need to hold space for us.
Yep.
But who's holding space for the men? Because they need to be held space for too.
Yep.
And this is what I do every day in my work with men is I hold space.
Yeah.
And they come to me because no one else does. No one else is holding space for them.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to therapists, obviously, and coaches and like myself. And it's important that you have times where, a man can be free to open up and express himself. And I think the main thing with that is you have to create safety, because men do not feel safe. I have a lot of male clients, they come and say, I'm afraid that if I tell her how I really feel, that she's going to make me wrong, or she's going to blame me, or I'm going to be criticized and shut down. So I just don't bother. And then the woman complain, he never opens up. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't share his emotions.
Yeah.
But this may have not happened with that woman specifically. It could have happened with the previous partner. It could have happened in childhood where the mother had shut him down, and so, or blamed or criticized or judged. And so he just decided he's not going to share. But the more that a woman creates safety, the more that he's going to open up. And there's a couple of ways to do this. A lot of a woman might say something like, and this is what you don't want to say, is something like, I wish you would just open up to me. And this for a man is going to make him resist, because it's wrong making. It's saying, you're not opening up to me, you need to open up to me. And that does not create him safety or space for a man to feel that it's going to be okay. Yeah. And so if a woman is noticing that maybe there's some stuff going on for a man, he's had a hard day at work or something's going on, the words that she can use is, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And this gives him the space when he's ready and he's processed, because he needs a lot more time to process than a woman do. So this is actually, there's been some scientific studies around this. And I was watching a video on this, and it said that the way that women process emotions is like a rocket ship going to space.
Yeah.
The way a man processes emotions is like a horse and cart carrying a rock. And so we expect that a man's like, it's like, I've processed this stuff and I'm ready to talk. And he's like still processing, going into his filing cabinet in his brain to work out what the hell just happened. And it might take him a few days before he figures that out. And then we're quietly going, waiting, come on, and we'll talk about this. And so we have to really be patient. It's really important to be patient. So it's waiting. And just in the meantime, Sam, I'm here for you. Yeah. And this allows him to take his time. And you don't want him to come to you when he's not ready to talk about it. Because it's not going to come from an authentic place. He may just say something to keep you happy, you know? Yeah. I remember there was a time when with an ex-partner, his brother had just passed away, and I could tell he was really internalizing it, and he wasn't talking to me about it. And I was like, you need to talk about it. Like, you're not dealing with your feelings. And I was just really in his face, and he got really angry about it. And we ended up having this massive fight. And because I was like, I need to be here for you, and you need to deal with this. You're numbing out. You're not dealing with it, like all this stuff. And sometimes, you know, the way that a man processes is, you know, he's zoning out, like say we're watching the TV, zoning out, and then he's going to process it in his own way. It's not going to look the same as we might process it. Yeah, yeah, right? I agree. Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing is to note is that, I'll go back. So that's a really beautiful role we can, is to just be aware that they're men and they're not women. And sometimes when we think they're misbehaving, it's that they're just being a man and they just do things differently. And that's okay. And giving him time is really being important, and being compassionate for where a man is at. And most men, if they become triggered about something, it's usually a feeling of disrespect, like I've been disrespected, or he'll feel disrespected. And so a woman can, you know, get curious about that as well. And so she can discover, well, you know, what is the ways that he feels disrespected, and start looking at how they can make some agreements around that. Yeah. Curiosity is really important, instead of, you know, going into, I guess, even self-criticism.
Yeah, I think with that, sort of in my own sort of personal relationship with my beloved, you know, I really have created with him, you know, I'm not out to disrespect him or emasculate him as a man. And I think sometimes it doesn't matter what your intentions are. Sometimes our social conditioning can really emasculate them. We don't even realize we're doing that. And I even the last week I didn't even realize my partner had been vulnerable with me, and I didn't even realize the actions that I took after it really emasculated who he was. And it wasn't a match for our relationship, and it wasn't a match for, you know, my love for him. And I didn't realize until I watched a Brené Brown video on vulnerability, and when someone's being vulnerable with you, you know, you honor that, like that's so sacred. And I had to go and clean up with him, and I had to, you know, like literally say to him, I've disrespected you. I dishonored our relationship, and I dishonored your vulnerability. And that sacred safe space that, you know, that we do want to create. So I think we do unconsciously create that sometimes, even though our intentions are good, and, you know, to be, you know, I've got no problems apologizing. I make mistakes all the time, but, you know, because the last thing I want for my partner is to not be that safe space for him. But there is that conditioning of like our expectations of who they are for us, and we need to pull ourselves up as well, like, and be really conscious about, you know, it's I don't know, perhaps I'm thinking it's because they're we're trained as women to be vulnerable and open and express, but you know, it takes something for a man to be that way. And so when we do dishonor that, it does have its impacts.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'm really big on around the emasculation. It's something very close to my heart, and really looking at the ways we do unconsciously emasculate.
Yeah.
And it's also about being compassionate on ourselves, because we're only human.
Yeah.
And being cleaning it up, like you say, like, oh, hang on, I just realized I emasculated, let me go clean it up.
Yeah.
And talk about it. And then that again creates the safety, and you can be like, well, what I'm really committed to is having this beautiful loving connection with you, and being a safe space for you. And you know, you can even give permission to say, I want you to pull me up if you feel emasculated.
Yeah.
You pull me up on it.
Yeah.
Call me on it.
Yeah.
Because I want to look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So we're talking a lot about safe spaces. So can you tell me, what does it mean to be a safe space or to be a safe container, and what's involved in the process? Yeah,
so basically the first thing you want to do is to set a time where that's really convenient, like set up a good time to talk. So often, particularly we as women, will just start and the man's like doing something else, you know, he's focused, let's say he's cooking dinner, for example, or driving the car, and we're like try to have this conversation or asking them lots of questions.
Yep.
And they're half there, like they're not fully present. So, and we're like, why aren't you listening to me? Like, you know. So it was really beautiful with a lover of mine who was saying, for driving the car, I'm having conversations like, right, I'm listening, but I'm half over here as well. So just so you know, so I know that not to have an important conversation when he's driving and trying to get somewhere. It's like only have an important conversation when we're actually together, fully present. So that's what you want to do, is make sure that you have the space.
Yeah.
And to check in and ask a time, like, is there a good time for you to have this conversation?
Yeah.
And if you're asking a man to talk, it's important to let him know that there's nothing, that he's not in trouble, that there's nothing wrong, because a man will usually go into thinking, I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Because this is what they've conditioned to. It's like when a woman wants to talk, it's something serious, and I'm going to get told off about something.
Yeah.
And this happened for me recently when I had something that was really vulnerable for me to share. It was all my stuff. I wasn't even blaming him for any, well, I wasn't going to blame him because I'm self-responsible, but it wasn't any kind of criticism or something that I really needed. It was just something vulnerable for me to share. And I said, you know, it's just something vulnerable that I had to share with you. Are you willing to hold space for me? And when's a good time to do that?
Yeah.
So something like that. And holding space, you know, we talk about holding space, and a lot of people are like, what's holding space? What does that mean?
Yeah. I've heard hold in the air, like here's a box, or like
is it like a space to like out in space, like holding space, like yeah. Can
I buy space online?
I actually had someone say, a guy say to me, is that like, is space a vibrator?
Yeah.
Holding space? I was like, I love that. So I heard this and I loved it. It was, holding space means I'm witnessing your expression whilst witnessing my own feelings.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm holding space for what you're expressing to me while witnessing what's coming up for me. Because a lot of the time when we're holding space for someone, you know, we might want to go into defense or explaining or fixing. Like that's a big one, the fixing. Rather than just hearing the person out.
Yeah.
And we as women know how much we like being heard and not fixed sometimes. Don't want to be fixed just yet.
Yeah.
And so, you know, men need the space too. They need to be heard as well. They don't tend to need it as much, but there are going to be times when men do need to open up and express themselves. So the things that we can say is when they're expressing is words like, I hear you. It makes sense that you feel that way. And be willing to say, I'm sorry as well. So like you said before, if he's feeling disrespected, be willing to say, I'm sorry, I disrespected you. which can feel really vulnerable because it's mean we're having to take ownership, even if it's something we think we maybe didn't do, but it's in the interpretation that it's come out that way.
Yeah.
And a really important one is never to say, I'm sorry you feel that way. Because when you say, I'm sorry you feel that way, it can come off as dismissing the feelings. It's like saying, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but you shouldn't feel that way. Like it's not really saying, I'm sorry for doing ... or I'm sorry that happened to you. Right? So it's just hearing exactly what's come up for them and acknowledging them. That. And if they want to if you do have advice, it's asking the question, are you open to hearing some advice? Would you like my point of view? Yeah, something like that. And if it's in a relationship where, it is about something that's happened in the relationship, it's then going into, well, how can we make this work better next time? Is there a plan or agreement or something that needs to be put into place, which is going to work for both of us and help us get both of our needs met? Yeah. And so this goes both ways. So what I've just shared is more like if a woman's having the safe space for a man to express, but it goes completely both ways as well.
So what advice do you have? I guess when we're trying to create a safe space in our relationships, and the safe space is there, and then your man gets vulnerable or your partner gets vulnerable, and what they're being vulnerable about is something to do with you, and you're committed to being a safe space, but you're also confronted by what they're saying. You might it might actually really hurt, or it might you might actually be really triggered or reacting inside. You want to cry your eyes out, or it might be something they're being vulnerable about, and it's really impacting the relationship. How, like, as a woman, and you're right, it does go both ways. Do you have any advice on how to deal with that?
Yeah, and it's so like when a man has to share something like that, it's big for him because men will unconsciously take responsibility for women's emotions. So if he's going to share something that he may know may hurt her, that's big. Like a lot of men will hold back from this kind of stuff. So it's an honoring thing. Like it's a real honor to have him like care that much that he's going to share this. But it probably would have been bothering him and needed to be expressed, and you want that anyway. So one of the things I love teaching is helping people manage their emotional triggers. Yes. The first thing is to just breathe. It's nice deep breaths. Yeah. Because literally when you're starting to get triggered, you've gone from your frontal lobe, which makes sense and is logical, into your reptilian brain, which is built for survival. So you're not even like, you're in survival. You think you're going to die basically because you're being you've gone into criticism or feeling not good enough. You're in some sort of story, and your survival brain is telling you this story, which is bringing up a past pain, something that come up, and so that's what's in that space. So when you breathe, you're basically telling your brain, I'm not dying. I'm here. I'm still alive. And so you have the chance to just to remind your brain that it's okay. You're not going to die. Like, because literally your brain's like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Like, I want the whole ground to swallow me up right now because I really don't want to hear that I'm not good enough. Yeah. Or feel the shame that's coming up. Yeah. Or wanting to project that shame onto him. So breathing is the first thing. Yeah. Right. And so in that space, if it's getting really hard to hear, that can be communicated. Like if it's getting really like, this is really hard to hear, you have to kind of check in with yourself and see if you're willing to keep listening. But you can communicate. This is hard to hear, but I'm willing to hear you out. Yeah. And even communicating, there's definitely stuff coming up for me, and I'm going to need to go and process this. Yeah. And then I would go and journal on what are all the stories that are coming up, and what is it bringing up, and allowing yourself to actually feel the sadness and the anger, and releasing those feelings. It's really important that we feel instead of doing something to avoid. It might be like, you might want to run away and be like, I don't want to hear this. I'm done. Like, I don't want to know. Like, blame, and then storm off. You know, you've gone, that's the flight response, or completely freeze up and just like completely switch off and not be able to hear anything.
Yeah.
Or go into the fighting of the, like, you know, wanting to blame and project back to the other person what they did, and then they should have done this, and like that would never happen if you hadn't done this first, like this kind of thing. And so that's the fight, flight, or freeze response, which is the reptilian brain.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is the breathing, and then see, can you be there still? And if you're going to leave the space, it comes from a place of what I call a connected timeout. Okay, so a connected timeout is where you still kind of are connected, but you're not running away, but you're just going to process some stuff, and then you're going to come back into connection.
Yeah.
And keep going when the stuff has been processed.
Yeah.
And so underneath those feelings is these unmet needs, and that's when you can talk about, well, what are the needs that aren't being met? Is it a hug, reassurance, you know, words of like, you know, maybe they need to be reassured that even though you did this thing that made me really feel disrespected, that I'm still loved, that you still want to be with me, that, you know, what agreements can we make? Okay. I think also, you know, to have those vulnerable conversations, you know, whether it's a man or woman, you can frame it up and start with, you know, I'm really committed to this relationship and to be connected, you know, so the person knows I'm not going to leave you. Like, this is, and I still love you, but there's something that we need to work through here.
Yeah.
So there may be some reassurance in the space. So it's breathing, seeing if you can stay like connected in the space, and noticing if you're wanting to go and fight, flight, or freeze. And speaking to that, it's like, oh, I'm freezing, I'm feeling a bit frozen. A good move for that is starting to just shake the fingers a little bit. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of different processes with this, but yeah, like, and then checking in with what you need. So feeling the feelings and checking in with what you need and having a conversation around that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing all of that today. And I think there's something to take away with all of us women. I really think that no matter how together we are, or how much training we've done, or how conscious we think we are, or how much personal development we think we've done, as human beings, we still get triggered. And it's especially when it's in conversation with someone that you love, and it might not be your partner, it might be your father, or it might be someone like that you know, like I know I'm emotionally connected to my dad, so when he goes through things, like I emotionally feel it as well. So this conversation isn't just about you know, our relationships, like we do get impacted. So being able to deal with that powerfully, as powerful as we can. I don't think anyone's ever perfect. And really exactly what you said, you know, creating your commitment to the relationship and to not leaving them and being a safe space for them, and we're still processing, you know, something that we're triggered by, or, you know, like could be impacted by. So that's some useful tools you created. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I think just having vulnerable conversations is so vital. It's like having those really hard conversations is what creates the connection. So
yeah,
really important.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So can you do you have any or what tips do you have, or what help can women get to build better skills in this area? Yeah, so
as I said before, like one of the things I love is helping people manage their triggers, and I have big processes around that. And I have, because I believe that, you know, the triggers are treasures. Like our triggers are there to help us love ourselves and to look at our wounds.
Did you just say our triggers are our treasures?
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard anyone say that before. Okay.
Well, we've got to learn how to transform the trigger into the treasure.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, you know, we have the opportunity to choose to process that trigger and see what's really going on, and feel the emotions and heal ourselves.
Yeah.
So, or we can choose to go into fight, flight, or freeze, and we can choose to keep it repeating again and again and again. until we choose to look at those triggers. And so there's this part of me, I've actually been triggered all day, by the way. But yeah. I was like, oh, this is so perfect. And it was about a man. And I was like, of course I'm doing this live stream tonight about triggers and men. And
it was in your clearing.
yeah, well, the thing is, I went to a workshop on the weekend and then all the stuff came up there. And then it was just all kind of like, it was like integration day where it all came up. But I had all these tools. Oh, I'm here. Are you here? I'm here. Hello. We lost her. Hi, everyone. We've lost Jasmine. I don't know where she's gone. I'll wait till she comes back. What? I can't see any of your comments because I'm on Zoom right now. So, hopefully she comes back on, and I might have to. Oh, it's just me. Okay, all right. Well, I'll finish. What we're going to talk about. So basically, what Jasmine was saying, do I have any tools? Basically, I take women through these processes to be able to have these amazing relationships with men. I teach them how to transform their triggers. I teach them through healing their love wounds. And I do that. I've got a women's relationship healing immersion, which I do on the Gold Coast here. Also do it one-on-one online. And I also have a book coming out in the next few months, which is my Heal Your Love Wounds process. And so that's, you can get onto that at tinyurl.com, Heal Love Book. And also what I have coming up is I have a couples workshop, a tantra couples workshop. We do lots of intimacy and connection practices. And, oh, here you are. I just kept going. You froze.
Hello. I think I just cut off.
You did. You're back. I kept going.
Thank you. We just had a storm come over, so I apologise about that. I'm in Brisbane, everyone. So thank you.
So I was just after talking about my events, and then when you said about getting better skills in this area, so maybe just finish that, and then I had another event in the Women's Relationship Healing Immersion in March, and I also have the An Art of Loving, bringing men and women together through worship in April. So people, if they want to have a look, they just go to my website, ejlove.com, or Facebook, EJ Love Priestess, and they're all listed on there. And I'm really excited to get my book out. So my book is basically all these processes, right? With all the triggers and the healing the wounds. And so I'm really excited to be getting that out there.
Beautiful. AJ, we can post the details to all your events on the link to this broadcast. So I just wanted to ask you, so sort of my final question is, I'd love to create a scenario with you. And I don't know if you've watched any of my other interviews, but I'd really like to create something with you. So I'd really love for you to imagine that everyone on this planet has a secret earpiece in their ear. And I don't want to get into the details of the technological details of how it's going to happen. It just works.
Good. It's all good.
Yeah. And, you know, you had a microphone in your hand and you had the opportunity to say anything you wanted to into the hearts and minds of everyone on this planet. What would your message be?
So my message is that you are here to learn how to love yourself.
Yeah.
And every time you're triggered or hurt, it's an opportunity to deepen the love for yourself.
Yeah.
It's showing you all the ways that you don't love yourself. So when something painful happens, ask yourself, what is within me that is wanting to be seen? And how can I love this part of myself?
Yeah.
That's it.
Beautiful. EJ, thank you very much for being part of the Divine Feminine Collective. And as I shared earlier on, I'm really out to open up this conversation. And I know, like I said before, you have done a lot of work on yourself, and you're passionate about human beings being connected to themselves and each other. And for me, you are a role model. And I love your self-expression. I love your freedom of your freedom to express your journey and your vulnerability so publicly. And people like me on my journey, you know, are really impacted by who you are. So I want to honour you, and I want to thank you for your contribution.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to receive that, because sometimes, you know, you don't know how you're impacting people that are following you on social media, and
Yeah.
share that with you. And
yeah,
so it's so beautiful to know that, and it's so beautiful the work you're doing as well.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, so much needed. So thank you for having me. I'm so honoured.
Yeah, well, thank you for your contribution. So we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening tonight. And this will be posted live on the Facebook page of the Divine Feminine Collective as well. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.